Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode of BOS Marine. Just doing another how-to here. Today we'll be changing the valve cover on this 225 Verado. Not sure if you can see it, but it's leaking heavily due to a crack. And yeah, let's jump right in. I'll show you what's wrong. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the cowlings off. Pretty easy on these things. Just a little lever on the top. Underneath this section right here. Do that, pop the bag. Set that aside, and then this one comes off with a little lever in the front. It's cable operated, and as you saw there, just release. And there you go, just like that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is remove this exhaust silencer. Just a 8mm T-bar, and you'll be able to get the bolts right in behind it here. There's only two of them, one on either side. And it just pulls back. This juicy diaper. Spill pad. Go. That's those two bolts there I'm talking about. Cleaning up the residual oil here. Just to clear off a little bit of this oil so I can show you guys where that leak is. Don't worry, we love our BC. Okay, so I've got this thing relatively clean. So there's a crack on here, and at first, you know, if you don't know what you're looking for, obviously you're gonna look down at the bottom because I don't see very much oil leaking across the top. But if you don't know what you're looking for and you have difficulty seeing it with a flashlight, take and get yourself a UV light. And the UV light will generally show you where the crack is. So let me see. I can zoom in on it here. Okay, so I've got this thing relatively clean. So there's a crack on here, and at first, you know, if you don't know what you're looking for, obviously you're gonna look down at the bottom because I don't see very much oil leaking across the top. But if you don't know what you're looking for and you have difficulty seeing it with a flashlight, take and get yourself a UV light. And the UV light will generally show you where the crack is. So let me see if I can zoom in on it here. So I don't know if you guys can see it there. There you go. You see that crack in there? So when oil leaks out of there, I've hosed it with brake clean. When oil leaks out of there, you can generally take a UV light because it would be much harder to see if you were unable to hose it down. And it would light up like pretty much like using a black light, and that is where the crack is leaking oil. I'll tell you guys something here. These engines are notorious for doing that. This is probably the fourth valve cover I've changed, and especially these L6 Verados, it cracks after you hit something with the propeller or the boat. If anything strikes the motor underway, that's like a weak spot, and that's where it ends up cracking the valve cover. So, you know, it's not very uncommon, but it does happen, and that's where the oil leaks from. Alright, I'm going to give you guys a bit of a front row seat here. The next thing we're going to do, after determining that crack is there, is pull all our coils out. Turn off, you just squeeze the plug. All 6 of them. Might as well undo the crank or cam position sensor, sorry. And get to undoing the coils. Okay, next you're going to want to undo the harness clips. Pretty simple, just pop out of there like so, just pop it off. Use a pick to reach it behind. And then all you do is undo your valve cover bolts. Now when undoing them, it's not that important unless this valve cover is still good. You want to undo them in a certain order so you don't warp or risk cracking it. And when it gets put together, there is going to be a torque sequence so that we don't stress out the plastic. Now this one here is a bit of a challenge because as you can see the electrical panels kind of interfering a little bit. Just want to make sure you don't cross thread that one and it goes back together. Another little thing, a little rag under here so that it catches all your residual oil. And you've got this vent line up here. What we'll do is take cutters and cut that outer clamp. Be careful not to damage the hose, so it's your vent line. Like so. Discard the old clamp. Alright, so you can tell this is the original valve cover because it still has the factory test sticker on it, run by tester Dora Medina, and it still has the original serial number tag on it. The new one does not. And I don't know if you can see it right in there. Or right there, you can see it seeping out of the crack and we haven't even done anything. And that's the culprit right there. So before we get too carried away, we're gonna wipe down the mating surface of the new valve cover gasket. Just take a little bit of brake clean on your rag, go along, and just wipe the residual oil. There might be a little bit of salt buildup. While you're doing this, you're also going to be inspecting things. For example, excessive wear on the camshafts, you know, things that look, excuse me, just getting over that cough that Rodney gave me. Inspecting things like normal wear, you know, anything that could be damaged on the camshaft, timing chain. You know, it's just while we're in here, it's good to do an extra little look around. Sometimes you get salt buildup around the bolt holes. You may want to make sure that gets cleaned up, otherwise you'll have a leak with the new gasket. Make sure you clean around the spark plug holes. Yep. That's pretty much it. So that's pretty much what it should look like before we put the gasket on there. You can see how clean it is. A little bit of pitting from salt. And as you can see, the camshafts don't look too bad. So we're gonna grab our new valve cover next and transfer over the cam position sensor and put her on. So here's the part number for the new L6 Verado valve cover. Works on all the inline sixes. In the box, as you can see, it's just a valve cover, nothing fancy. It's pretty dull. It's got your baffle there for the vent. And this one already comes with this O-ring style gasket, and especially the ones around the spark plug. When you do take this off to inspect your valves, like on the 400Rs, you will have to order new gaskets because you can't reuse them. You shouldn't reuse them, but I'm sure in a pinch you'd be able to. But yeah, I'm just going to transfer over the cam position sensor and the oil fill cap. Alright, cam position sensor's in there, oil fill cap's in there. Now, one thing I like to do before putting these on after cleaning that surface with brake clean is just dip my finger in oil and just put a light film on the new rubber gasket. Just helps it get into place, doesn't stick anywhere. So now, we're going to make sure this goes on as easy as possible so we don't damage anything. So we'll start with the fuse panel side first. So you can push the fuse panel, the electrical panel out of the way. So, we'll take our bolts. Now, for these bolts, I like to put a little bit of grease on them, and especially the ones for the spark plugs, because these are stainless, head's aluminum, and these ones here are brass. And as you know, two dissimilar metals going together don't like to stay without seizing up. It could cause problems down the road. It's not taken apart. Trying to be taken apart. A few bolts started. Tighten them, just loosely something in there. As you can see, I'm not just going around the valve cover, I'm actually going across from each other in most cases just to evenly put pressure on it. That's really important on those plastic covers. Alright, all the bolts are in. So now, since all the bolts are in, roughly, hand tight or just touching, we're going to look at our service manual, and here it shows us the torque sequence, so the order that the bolts need to be torqued on, because this is a plastic cover and it's really important to do that. And I didn't print the page off, but the valve cover bolt torque spec is 8 Newton meters, so it's not very tight. But what I'm going to do now is set my snap-on 3/8 drive wrench to 8 Newton meters. Oof. That's right. So you guys can use a click style torque wrench. I've done that in the past. I just have a digital snap-on one because the range is quite large. 5 to 125 foot-pounds. I will say these are worth every penny. So I'm just going to go over this one more time. That's it. Valve cover is torque to spec. Just the way I like to do things. I don't know what it is. I'm going to look in the manual. Alright. Now we're going to snap the wire harness back into place. Easy. Push it in there. That snaps into place. 3 snaps total. Put the cam position sensor back in. Put all our coils back on. Careful not to drop those things because they are sensitive. No bear. So once those are all just hand tight, you can plug in your coils. Next will be the air silencer, muffler, idle muffler, silencer. It's really important too to clean everything as you go along, because once this is done, we're going to fire it up and check the leaks, and if it's been cleaned beforehand, it's going to be super easy to spot something out of the ordinary. Because the last thing we want is to send it back and have someone say, oh man, there's still a leak. Well, we were just in there, right? I'm just degreasing this so that when it's done I can just rinse it off. And have all that old oil wash away. Back on. There's a trick getting these things in here. Before you tighten that one, do the other side. Alright, now I'm just going to trim this thing up and flash it up in the test tank to see if there's any leaks. And if not, we're golden. Slap the cowling back on and put her back. You always do that before you start the engine up. Even if you know it's just a good habit. And you always double dip, because the first reading sometimes is incorrect. Check the leaks. was this video on changing out a cracked valve cover on an L6 Verado. If you guys like what you see, by all means, like and subscribe, and really show support on the videos we make. If you want to see more, just put the comment section and leave a note. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. I'm just going to wash this thing up, put the gallon back on. Meantime, get back out there. Oh yeah, don't forget, put that vent line back on with a new Oetiker clamp. There we go. Give it a gentle squeeze. There you go.